Yesterday I worked on getting the stern here fit, so that's all set to go and painted. Today we can get it fastened. Aaron did the same thing up on the stem, and while we were working on that, we also got another plank cut out and ready to go. The other kind of exciting news is Casey, who's been one of the regular volunteers. He came down yesterday and he's going to be here for the next week. So he got furloughed from work and he has been self-isolating in backwoods Vermont with him and his wife and his daughter. So it seemed quite reasonable that he is healthy and well. He hasn't interacted with anybody, and we have been in the same case here. So I think that's going to be a huge help. It's just been Aaron and I trying to make planks and hang planks, and having an extra set of hands, especially an extra set of hands who knows his way around the boathouse and where all the tools are and stuff, is going to be a big help. So we're going to try to really motor this week and see if we can make use of this time. Let's see if this old hog feels like running today. Good job, baby, good job. So we're trying to get into a bit of a cycle with finding and gluing and making and hanging so that we can just keep working through and not kind of get hung up anywhere. Spreading the dolphinite. No matter whether we plank with oak or we plank with cedar, we've had some challenges. One of the challenges with the oak is that all of this stuff this one's 2 3/4 inches thick, and having all the lumber to the thicker dimensions means we could use the lumber for anything. But bringing this stuff down to thickness has definitely been challenging. We can do it on the bandsaw, but it's slow. The Alaskan sawmill works well, except this dry oak just murders the chain. So you gotta sharpen the chain a lot. And the big thicknesser will eat it up, but you gotta send it through a whole bunch of times. So it's been kind of tough. And then with COVID, we haven't been able to get the sawmill to come in and resaw it for us. And the sawmill down the road that we were taking them to from time to time, they're closed because of COVID as well. So we've kind of been limited to what we can do in-house. Thankfully, things are slowly starting to open up, and the sawmill is able to come in next week. So sometime next week they're gonna come. We're gonna do a load of oak logs that we have down in the wood yard, so that we have some more oak for the framing stock and for the clamp and for the shelf and that kind of thing, because we are putting a pretty big dent in the oak pile planking with it. And the other thing we're gonna have them do is mill up the entire remainder pile of dry oak that we have and bring it down to closer to planking thickness. It's a little bit of a process making planks, but we'll get there. We finally have a really nice day. The last few days have been kind of crummy. But we got the glue boxes here set up. And hiding in here, we have the next oak plank. So this is gonna go on the starboard side right after the one that they get fit now. And then the one that is on the bench inside, that one's gonna head over onto the port side. So tomorrow we'll take this one out, put it in the boathouse, pop the other one in, and get to it. Casey and Aaron got this last oak replacement plank fastened today. So all they really had to do was the stem. We had already got the rest of it fit. And they also had to do all the way back here on the stern. As you can see, the planks are getting longer and longer and longer as we go higher and higher up the boat. So this right here is where we had drilled for the cedar and had it explode. This black spot is just where we had a clamp on there and then we steamed it and just left the mark. That'll all sand out. The oak went in much nicer than the cedar. No checking, no explosions, much, much, much better behaved. So while they were working on that this morning, I was out picking the next plank. So that is laid out on the bench over here. I got to go through and cut the scarves on those and get those ready for the heat boxes. And right over here, we have the next plank. So this is going to go up here on the starboard side of the hull. And Aaron's got the rabbit plane with the fence way down there on the end. And he's just working on getting the top edge here all nice and smooth and fair. And then him and Casey are going to start fitting that onto the starboard side of the hull here, while I wrap up getting the scarves cut and getting that one ready for the glue box. It's been a really busy week around here. So Casey came down and Aaron's been here and the three of us have just been going gangbusters trying to get as much planking done as we can. And it's been going really well. Aaron and Casey have been predominantly inside the boathouse and I've been predominantly out here. I've been picking timber and trying to figure out the best use for the oak that we have in the pile. And then Casey and Aaron have been inside the boathouse. They've been fitting planks, fastening planks, chopping on the rabbet. And it's been great having the two of them there. Aaron's been here for a little bit now and has helped with the rabbet and has helped with a few planks and has definitely gotten up to speed on that. And Casey was here before COVID and all of that, and he helped hang a bunch of planks. He had a pretty good idea of what's going on. So those two guys have been able to work in there, which has freed me up to be out here and dealing with the lumber and getting planks prepped and all of that fun stuff. But it's made a really big difference having the third hand here. So we've got 2 oak planks. They're all wrapped up in these tarps like burritos. The reason they're wrapped up is it's been sunny a bunch this week, and the oak getting cut down to size and then sitting out here baking in the sun, it dries it out, and oak likes to move and it likes to check. So these covers are simply to keep the sun off it and try to make sure that that oak behaves. So we've been moving along, and the sawmill will be here in the next 4 or 5 days, and we're gonna resaw the dry oak that we have for planking, and we're gonna saw up a bunch of logs down in the wood yard. So having the sawmill come in is our equivalent of getting a lumber delivery or going to the lumber yard. And it's gonna be great to restock the oak pile, and fingers crossed that the logs down in the wood yard are as good as they look, and that we'll get a bunch of good stock out of them. We won't really know until we saw them. It's always a bit of an adventure doing that. We'll see what comes out of it. But let's jump in the boathouse and see what Casey and Aaron are up to and the progress that we've made in there. All right, so Casey's here chopping away on the rabbit, getting ready so that we have enough room to tuck the next plank in. And this top plank here is the one that we fastened yesterday. So that was the last of the replacement oaks. Feels real good to have that on the hull and to be making headway again. And then back here we have the next plank. So Aaron's just working on tucking in the stern here. Did a little extension on the rabbit for the next one. And just putting in the bevels and getting this last bit fit. This here is not sapwood. This is just some lighter coloration in the oak. Do not fear, it is not sapwood. Trimming up the bottom here, tweaking the bevel, putting the caulking bevel in. And the last thing it gets is some swipes on the stern here so that we can nestle it down into the rabbit.
Don't mind me.
Yeah, keep working. Get to work, ye knave. So what Aaron's doing right now is shellacking. And the shellac creates a waterproof barrier so that the big timbers don't absorb all of the dolphinite bedding compound. They'll absorb the oil out of it. And the paint, the anti-fouling paint, is great for keeping the critters at bay, but it is not particularly adept at blocking the transfers of the oil where the shellac is. So that's why all of these main fang surfaces get the shellac, then the anti-fouling paint, then the bedding compound. And the shellac only takes like 10 to 20 minutes to dry. It's a really quick process, not really too much of a pain. All right, I'll leave you to it. I'll get out of your way. So we use the pole saws for partially for flush cutting any of the graving pieces that we put in before we power plane them down, so that we can just put them in nice and proud and they go in easy. But it is murder on the blades, and this is my really old one. I probably had that pole saw for 10 years. It's pretty worked. So last week was a good week. We finished up the replacement planks. We got another plank on the boat. And as you can see, the port side plank is ready to be fit. And the starboard side plank here is ready to be fit. We just got to hit the pause button for a few minutes here, actually a few days, while we do the sawmilling and restock our oak pile. But she's looking more and more boat-like. And these oak planks are going on a lot easier than the cedar planks were, with much, much fewer repairs. So I'm pretty hopeful that once we get done the sawmilling here and we dive back into planking, that pace will pick up just a little bit, and we'll see what we can do. So as you can see, the rabbit's extended. It's ready for the next plank. We just got a little more painting to do there. We had a strap that went around the boat when we were planking on the other side, so we couldn't paint that little section. But other than that, she's good to go. And since it's going to be a few days of neglect and we're starting to get into some much warmer weather here, Aaron and I went and wiped down the whole hull with linseed oil. You don't really appreciate how much planking is on the boat, at least until this point, until you go to paint the whole thing and wipe the oil on it. There is a heck of a lot of surface area. And the top plank there is the last one to go on the boat. We got that done just as Casey was about to take off. Big thanks to Casey for coming out for the week. That was a really big help. And here is the next plank that's on deck. It's all oiled up and ready to go. But first, we got to restock the oak pile and get some sawmilling done. So we oiled up the backhoe this morning, and Aaron got all the tools piled up in there, while I went and got some more hydraulic fluid, because this old gal leaks a little bit. So we've got chains and fuel and saws and all that fun jazz. Yesterday, Aaron and I went to South Hadley, which is one town over, and we helped my buddy Tim with this big old walnut tree. So it was in his backyard, and it had started to die and was endangering a building that they have there. And he wanted it taken down and wanted to know if we wanted some walnut. So walnut is not a particularly useful boat building wood. It's certainly not up for planking or decking or anything like that. It's just not rot resistant enough. But it is absolutely gorgeous, and it is a pleasure to work. And I think it would be great to have to play on the interior and maybe light look nice with the mahogany that we have. And Tim's a good friend, and it would be nice to get that tree out of his yard. So we went over, did a little social distancing, cut this thing down, borrowed a trailer from Tom, thank you Tom, and brought them home. So we're gonna get these milled up when the sawmill comes in the next couple days. I think there's some really nice boards in this log. This one's got some rot and some hollow spots, such as that. We'll see what happens when we saw it up. But sometimes that wood that's starting to rot and die and it's on its last leg is some of the most beautiful. So it would be totally fine using it for some of the interior and cabinetry and that kind of stuff. So we'll see what's in them, just a little more wood to add to the log pile. Tom, the arborist friend of ours, has been dumping chips down here on the woodyard road for us and have been pushing the piles around with the backhoe. And Grandpa just came down and used the rake on the tractor and dragged it all out for us. So now we have a much smoother, less tippy and bumpy road to bring the mill in and bring all the timber out, which is going to make all that a lot safer and more enjoyable. So big thanks to Tom for all the chips, and thanks to Grandpa for coming down with the tractor and the rake and smoothing it out for us. We had a lot of oaks die recently from a caterpillar infestation, and we harvested a bunch for firewood, and we harvested a bunch of the really nice butt logs for our friends Nikki and Tim. And they recently built an art studio for Nikki. She's a painter. And the red oak is going to become the floor in her studio. So we're going to pile all the red oak here, and then it's out of our way and it can dry. And at some point when they're ready, Tim and Nikki can come and get it and install it in the studio, which will be really cool. So this is our log pile. Aaron was just cutting the ends off the cribbing underneath so we can get the mill nice and tight to it. The white oak's just gonna get thrown here while we mill, and then as soon as the mill leaves, we'll bring it up to the house and stack and sticker it. We went through and painted the ends of all of the white oak logs. So we've got some pine here on the very front of the pile and a couple walnut logs. And then there's a couple hickory up there, and the rest is a hodgepodge of white oak and red oak. So we painted all the butts of the white oaks so that as we mill, there's no chance of the white and the reds possibly getting mixed and confused with one another. And then we're getting ready to drop that big pine tree back there. So as you can see, it lost its top recently. It was quite a bit taller. And that means that tree is not long for this world. So since the mill's coming in and it's right here, we might as well drop it.
All right.
Give it a couple minutes before you go in there. Make sure that there's nothing else that's going to come raining down. You see this guy just landed right here?
Oh, missed that.
Yeah. Cool. Do you think we hit the GoPro? First tree.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We'll make a lumberjack out of you yet.